And welcome. You are live with the only real libertarian podcast that exists in the entire world. This is the Black Powder Podcast. And I want to say we are proudly hosted by Firearms Radio Network, proudly sponsored by Common Arms Trade Company. And with Common Arms, if you buy something over $100, which most of you broke fools can't do, but if you're not broke, go to Common Arms Trade Company, buy something over $100, use the code Black Powder and get 10% off. Save that $10 so you can go get a cheeseburger or buy a 6-pack of IPAs, which is the best beer available. We're also brought to you by one of my personal favorites, Horny Town Guns and Ammo. If you're in Horny Town and you need something that goes bang, go to Horny Town Guns and Ammo. And with that being the introduction and all that good stuff, being that I am the only real libertarian, one of your hosts today, Marcus Matthews, I want to introduce my good friend here, Eric Parker. Eric, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for the intro. Thanks for always being a gracious host and allowing me to be a part of this podcast. So cheers to that. Speaking of, what you sipping on?
I'm sipping on a Pizza Port Ponto Session Indian Pale Ale, an IPA, and it is absolutely I'm gonna sue them for copyright infringement because obviously I'm the wise man. Everything good I am. And I just don't want people to think I'm conceited or anything. That's just confidence. And I can confidently tell you tonight you're gonna enjoy this episode. Our guest had a somewhat emergency, so they may or may not show up at some point in time. But we want to bring you some interesting libertarian material on current events. Eric and I were talking about in the pregame. But before we do that, Eric, is there anything new going on with you as far as your North Carolinian Libertarian Party stuff?
So I am going to be a delegate to national with the Libertarian Party of North Carolina.
Excellent.
I was originally just an alternate, and somebody wasn't able to go, so I was the first alternate, so first one to get bumped up on the list. I'm excited about not just my opportunity to nominate the Libertarian presidential candidate, but there's also party officers. You got the chair, vice chair, all the executive committee positions. You get your regional reps. You get different at-large reps. You know what I mean? I don't know exactly what all is going to be up. You also get an opportunity to debate on what our platform looks like. So I'll be there. This will be my first time going to national. I've been to several Florida state conventions. I went to North Carolina State Convention this year. Other than that, I am the chair here in Guilford County, which is kind of like High Point in Greensboro, North Carolina. Forsyth County, neighboring county, has Winston-Salem, and I think south of me, Davidson County has Lexington. So we call ourselves the Triad Libertarians, and on 420, we're going to be doing, I think we're going to go on a hike and go get some barbecue somewhere as a group, the Triad Libertarians. So I might be able to find a link to an event. We haven't actually made the event yet. So follow us on Facebook, those different counties, or the Triad Libertarians, and make sure you come chill with us on 420, and we'll go for a hike and eat some barbecue.
So your actual moniker is the Triad Libertarians? It sounds like some Darth Vader shit.
So here where we live, they call it the Piedmont Triad. And it's just because you have Winston-Salem, Greensboro, and High Point are all right there. And even though like Davidson County is like just outside of the Triad, Lexington, I consider a part of that too, because it's another one of the better known towns or cities in this area, central North Carolina.
Excellent. So, being like I said, our guest had a emergency that he had to take care of. What was his name again?
Russ Clark, I believe.
Russ Clark. Yes. And my
So
bad, Russ. Yeah.
yeah, I was just gonna say. So Russ, I put out something on Twitter just saying, "Hey, who'd like to come on and candidates?" He said, "I'm not a candidate. I'm a policy guy. You know what I mean? A libertarian. What's the term you use? Libertarian policy, not advocate,
Advisor or something
advisor. Like yeah, and you know, I think it would have been a good opportunity. So if he's able to hop on whenever, we'll let him talk
yeah,
about it.
sure.
But
And I want to explain to the people why, I would struggle to think most people know who Russ Clark is, because he's a behind the scene guy. But the reason we wanted to have him on is because this is the time where we have to discuss how we can win. And yeah,
that's right, Tub.
you know, and it's torture for me right now because this guy, he, oh my God, the backstage stuff, he's just a very interesting guy. At any rate, the reason why we want to have policy people on is we want to be able to better explain why the Libertarian Party is a viable option coming up when we have the worst possible options. I think I read a stat there is 90 million Americans eligible to run for president of the United States. And
Yep.
we have undoubtedly the worst two candidates that Satan himself could not possibly present to the American people.
Who's to say that he didn't? I'm just kidding.
No, I think these guys are well beyond. I mean, we have to be all inclusive with everything bad from every, like the bad deity from every religion around the world, as if they were in a Congress and they elected these two candidates to rep. It is that bad, in my humble opinion.
To me, it's like, you know, there's a lot of people that support Trump because of the things he said when he campaigned, but he's got a record of running up our national debt more than any president before him. And so far, I think even more than Biden has done. I haven't fact checked that, so I'm sure somebody will in the comments. But we've seen now what both of them can do, and I don't think anyone is or you know, any thinking person that's not entrenched in their camp will say, man, these guys did good on, you know, there are areas maybe where both of them said the right things. I don't know that they've done any of it, or not a lot of it anyways. So
no, and that's classic politicianing, and that's my word. You guys can't use it. Politicianing. To that libertarian lady, Michael is busy with his candidacy for
campaign, yep.
yeah, and we fully support him. We're right behind him, and when he's available, we will have him on. When he's not, we will support him. Go to mwforliberty.com. Please donate, or if you're in his district, please vote for him. But most people that are listening to this, they're not in his district. And this is the one of the most, if not the most winnable libertarian race here in the United States so far. And being that we need to start at the local level, if you really believe in a libertarian message, we have to start doing what the Democrats and Republicans are doing. And we just saw that in Mar-a-Lago and New York in the past couple of weeks, where they get out there and they support their person, whether they're they show up.
They raise money. They give to, and I get it. A lot of people are like, I don't want to give my money to a candidate that isn't going to win the election. So, for example, and I'm not saying don't give to your presidential candidates, because some of them have plans to disrupt the system, you know, to accomplish something to increase that percentage of votes. So, but I get it whenever it's just a name on a ballot and you're like, well, they're not really campaigning. Michael White just turned down the #1 libertarian podcast tonight with us because
Yeah,
he's out
the only one.
campaigning. He's
Campaign.
working on getting volunteers involved and raising money. So, and because it's a winnable race, you know what I mean? Or it's at least it's the most winnable, but if it's a competitive race, you have to support. And the more local to you that race is, the further those dollars go. You know what I mean? So anyone watching this that might be from Arkansas, like, you can actively go support a candidate that will make a difference in your state.
Okay. Oh, so real quick, I want to make one point, and then we're actually going to bring in Russ. He showed up. Okay. So let me say this to the last part about supporting libertarians. If you can't afford to send a libertarian candidate $10, that should be your onus for voting for a libertarian, because that means the uniparty duopoly is interfering with your life so much that you can't spare $10 to support liberty. And with that, we're going to add Russ Clark into our conversation. Good evening, Russ.
Good evening. How are you? Sorry I'm late.
No worries.
No, it's fine.
I had a time zone difference, so I thought I had an extra hour. So
we kind of figured that when
we
and
were
I
like,
blame 100%. I blame my co-host tonight. For
I'll take it.
Yeah, you need to. This is your fault.
I'll own that, because I'm the East Coast guy, so my time's first, or however you want to look at it. So I kind of screwed it up. My bad.
That's all right. New York time is the most important time, right?
Well, this is North Carolina time. That's
You're on the same damn time. Okay. It's the 13 colonies time. You guys are all So,
Russ, nice to meet you. By the way, sorry.
Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming on the only real libertarian podcast that ever existed in the history of mankind, the Black Powder Podcast. Russ Clark, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you guys?
Good. So, I was talking when we started. I was talking about why we wanted to have you on, and we've had the people in the front, the faces of the Libertarian Party, from Spike Cohen, Lars Mapstead, Chase, just about all the candidates. And I'm not intentionally not mentioning their names, so don't take it, please. Nobody take it as that.
I'm not offended. No, neither should anyone else.
Yeah, we want to have people that are behind the scenes on as well, for the simple fact that we feel that as libertarians, this is our time this year because of the worst possible candidates that the duopoly uniparty has ever fielded. But the reason why I wanted to have you on is because you're a policy guy, and with policy comes practice, in the sense that what it's supposed to be. So I'm gonna ask you one simple question, but first I'll have you explain who you are, what you've done, and you give your origin story. After that, the second part is how can we win? So take it away.
All right, good. So my name is Russ Clark. I've been working on libertarian campaigns, and only libertarian campaigns, since 2016. My first experiment into politics was attending the Libertarian Party of Illinois convention and working with the Gary Johnson campaign on ballot access here in Illinois. In 2018, I met a crazy man at the Illinois convention by the name of Larry Sharp. I volunteered to be on his campaign team in 2018. As someone living in Illinois, the best thing that I could do would be on the policy side. So a lot of Larry Sharp's policies that were written in 2018 were either written by me, or I had a major hand in crafting a lot of those policies, including Larry's tagline, "Grow up like onions."
Yes, that's a good one.
We had a pretty good hand in that. In 2020, I was helping out with a couple of presidential candidates, just from a strategy and speaking talking points time frame, and then 22 was again working as a on ballot access coordinator, and then I'm also the treasurer here in Illinois as well. So for the state party. So
Awesome.
Are you currently helping any candidates? And you don't have to say their name if it's, strategic or whatever. If you want to say their name, feel free, and if not, no big deal.
no, I had a couple of offers, and I politely declined them. The presidential ticket is a lot of work. I found out in the governor's campaign that there's a lot of work involved and a lot of late nights, and I kind of wanted to step back from some of that. So, right now I'm just working on a little. Again, I'm working on ballot access here. So everybody in our party is going out and getting signatures to get whoever the Libertarian candidate is, get them on the ballot here in Illinois.
So is that an ongoing problem in Illinois? Every election cycle, we got to go out and get the signatures again. And what amount of signatures is required?
So we have to get 25,000. And I wish I would have had a petition on me handy, because our petitioning process is much simpler than New York's. So New York had a simple petition sheet before, like we did. But with the changes that happened after Larry got ballot access in 2018, they made it very, very complicated, and we have to get 20. So here in Illinois, we have to get 25,000 in 90 days. In New York, they have to get 45,000 in 45 days.
Wow. That's
so
crazy.
When the news broke today that there's been rumors. There have been rumors that RFK is looking at coming back to the Libertarian Party for ballot access. That just told me that even his campaign can't do 45,000 signatures in 45 days. Yeah. And the reason that he cannot do 45,000 signatures in 45 days is that he will have to turn in 45,000 sheets of paper. So to nominate somebody in New York now, the nomination papers are on a whole sheet of paper. Here in Illinois and in a lot of other states, you just sign your name, write your name, write your address, and then we go on. There's multiple lines on that page.
So it's like a long list on one sheet and you just fill
That's
it in.
how it is in California too.
Yeah. So New York is completely different. Now, the other thing that New York did was, on that single sheet of paper that only has one person, that one sheet has to be notarized. So when I go and turn in a sheet to be notarized, I've got up to 15 signatures on my petition sheet. They have one. So now you're turning in 45,000 sheets plus 45,000 notary stamps to get on the ballot. So I am positive that the Kennedy campaign is not going to be on in New York.
Right. So
I think it's impossible.
We were going to talk about that tonight too. That was one of our subjects that we wanted to bring up, and I find it impossible. When I read that today, my immediate thought was hell no. And
talking about Kennedy being the Libertarian.
About Kennedy, yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I understand why a lot of Libertarians like him solely on one subject, and that's his stance on vaccines. But if we're going to start basing our opinions on one matter, particularly a health matter, the first thing and I say this all the time, the first thing we should be upset about is the American food supply chain and how it is the number one thing that's going to get you, because at this point vaccines are completely voluntary and nobody's being forced to do that. So that was tyranny. Don't get me wrong. when they were forcing people to do that. But at this point, that's not what we should be standing on. We should be looking forward on what's going on. And I just feel RFK is the absolute worst option for the libertarians to push forward, especially when we have a guy like Javier Milei down in Argentina actually getting things done. And we're going to get this gravelly voiced 70-year-old guy who said he would sign any assault weapons ban that came to his desk if Congress agreed upon it.
Yeah.
Well, I just made myself a hypocrite because that's like one of my top priorities is the Second Amendment, you know, and so his stance on that just absolutely just killed my any thought process of even thinking about voting for him.
Yeah. So I think, and Russ, I'll let you give your opinion on RFK Jr. being the nominee, but I just think there are newer libertarians, and I don't want them to feel like they aren't welcome, but
Right.
they hear the name Kennedy, they see he's got money and support and popularity, but he isn't a libertarian. That doesn't mean like I don't appreciate him running as a president. I'm not going to vote for him. He doesn't stand for what I believe, but he's an attorney. He's a smart guy. He's got political connections. He's got money. I'm just saying this is what I think these other libertarians that think he should run as our candidate, I think that's what they're thinking. You know what I mean? And while some of those points are correct, it's not enough for him to be our candidate. Now, could we use his support to gain ballot access? Sure. Or not just us, but third parties in general. Like, that's what I think is a good thing about him being in this race, even if it hurts our vote total, is there's a guy out there that whenever he doesn't get all 50 states, I'm hoping he spends the rest of his life fighting for ballot access for third parties in the United States. So, I mean, but I don't want him to be the libertarian nominee, and I don't think he's going to get it. You got to come to the delegates at national would have to choose them. And in my opinion, we got at least 3 good, viable candidates at the top of our ticket that are their delegates or they're camping out around those 3, I think, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're willing to, if their guy doesn't make it, well, they got 2 more good options. And that's how I think, and RFK is not one of them. So,
right.
Russ, your thoughts?
So in working with candidates and campaigns, the biggest reason that people can say libertarians never win is because our voter demographics are all under the age of 65. We pull terribly with everyone over 65. So from that standpoint, Kennedy resolves another issue. In other words, he brings money, he brings a name. He also brings voters over 65 because he does have some support in that crowd. And the Kennedy name is powerful. I'll tell you a little story. So my first experiences with politicians was when I was in 5th and 6th grade. So my 6th grade teacher was the House Democratic leader, and my Sunday school teacher that year was he was the news director at the news station in town, and he ran for Montana Senate, and he won. So and he was a Republican. So I had a Republican and a Democrat, and those 2 men kind of figured out that there was about a good 5 or 6 of us in that class that were hearing it from one guy 5 days a week, and then we go to church and then we get it from the other guy. And neither one of them disparaged the other. They didn't disparage the other party. The early 90s was a different time politically. And the reason that I bring this story up is because the news anchor later ran for county commissioner. It's basically a countywide office. So he basically went from having a voter universe of roughly 4,000 people to 120,000 people. He ran against a Kennedy and got and lost by 8 points in a heavily Republican county. So I've told a number of people, Kennedys don't lose elections. Just if they're on there, they got a pretty decent chance, and particularly for the over 65 voter who they were alive in the 60s. They remember his dad and uncle, and they vote. There's that nostalgia push again. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that. And do you swallow your pride, take one for the team, knowing that they're probably going to lose and you'll have ballot access?
So, I mean, I'm assuming you're saying if Kennedy got the Libertarian nod at convention, which I don't think is going to happen.
I would agree with you. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah. But if he did, you think obviously he would break records for the most votes a Libertarian ever got, but it's not going to be enough to win the election.
No. And I don't think he could win. I don't think he could win a state. I don't see a path to victory.
Not even Vermont.
So,
well,
why Vermont, Marcus? I don't get.
Vermont is probably the most independent-minded state that immediately came to mind when he said he probably couldn't win the state.
Is it because they're like a split state, and then so third parties do well there? Or?
Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, he does, but he caucuses as Democrat, but he's a registered independent, so you're right.
Yeah. And the other thing too is that Bernie proposes every federal gun legislation known to man in the Senate, but Vermont was one of the first states to have constitutional carry.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things about them. They don't go with the flow of the river. They wade against the current a lot of times, as far as I can visualize or recognize in their politics. And with that being said, I want to ask you, what message should the presumptive nominee for the Libertarian Party, what would be the phrase that you would come up with in this 2024 election cycle?
I think my recommendation to them would be to have your primary message be about the how the economy is not working for people under the age of 40.
Right.
When you take a look at the most disgruntled people in our country, it's usually people under the age of 35 who have been sold this lie by the Obama administration that college makes everything go away.
Yeah.
And so they go out and get a college degree, and that's not to say that college is bad. I mean, I'm a degreed engineer, so I obviously have letters after my name and a bachelor's degree and all that other fun stuff. But what a lot of people go for in college is not hard sciences and engineering. If you're getting a humanities degree right now or a degree in social work, you're signing up to be a church mouse, as poor as a church mouse. And we all know that if you get a degree in education, you're going to be poor, but you're also going to have a pension. And I'm one of these libertarians that says, if you're going to get shot at or teach little kids, you probably should get a pension, because
you earned it.
Your job is highly stressful. So
I'm sorry. What's interesting, because I have 2 kids in college right now. So one of them is going for nursing, which is
Okay.
always going to be a need, and the other one is going for education with an emphasis. Well, he's a history major with an emphasis with minoring in education, and he wants to be a teacher. And I said, don't step foot off campus until you get your master's degree if you want to be a teacher, first of all.
Yeah. And
But
honestly, tell him go straight into teaching college. You know what I mean? Like, why?
if he
In
can,
my opinion, right?
well, he
I
wants to
don't know.
be a baseball coach, so that's part of his overall. This is a very motivated
Oh,
individual,
Gotcha.
and he's
Well,
playing
that's a
baseball right now.
passion too. So
Yeah. So, and this has
I
been
thought he's gonna go pro.
well, we're still working on that. So that's the plan. But it was just ironic that you covered both of those, because that's where I think libertarian policy could also touch on, because there are trades that are going to be timeless, and that's mainly plumbing, electrician, welding. Those type of things cannot be truly replaced with AI or robotics or anything like that. And the failure to teach kids, because I believe high school should be like a junior college, where first 2 years you make sure you're proficient in reading, writing, and arithmetic, as all the dullards say when they speak about education. But the next 2 years, if you're college bound and have a plan on what you want to do, then yeah, you take college prep courses. If you're not, and this is the thing about public policy that I absolutely hate, and one of the things libertarians can touch on, is telling all kids that they need to go to college. And what that does, it sets up people for failure, because there's inevitably going to be 15 to 30% of those people that don't go to college at all, that are going to fall through the cracks, that are going to get into immoral things and criminal minded activities, because it was pounded in their head that they should be going to college, and then they think of themselves as failures. And that also contributes to the mental health crisis that this nation faces, because we're not being realistic with our youth about how life is. And to the point, yeah, because everybody under 40, you need a roughly $100,000 throughout this whole country to afford to buy a house. And in certain areas, like in California, our median home price is approaching $900,000. And that's roughly $200,000 to $250,000 a year you need to make to afford that house. Now, if you're not going in the right direction as far as your career is concerned, and nobody taught you entrepreneurship or financial management, you're putting yourself in a perilous position. And you know, if I was to work with Russ Clark, that would be one of the policy issues I would press
Well,
for
well,
the.
well,
Russ, you helped Larry Sharp. Did you help him on his education policy?
yeah,
Because
we
a
did.
lot of what Marcus talked about, I know Larry, that is his platform on education. Literally, what Marcus said about 2 years of this, and then either you're going to work or you're going to college prep, essentially. I don't know if you can elaborate more on that.
Yeah, I
Since you
can.
helped him.
So the and I can tell you guys how that policy came about. So we came to the realization in 17, when we were working on that policy, that the education system in New York State was not meeting the needs of today's young people. And so the problem is that we had a constitutional amendment in New York that guaranteed education for 12 years. So we had to figure out something of how can we get people the education that they are entitled to by the state constitution, but still make improvements and get people into a system where they're going to excel, not just survive, but excel. So I brought up to Larry. I said, well, I know of I'm originally from Montana. I actually didn't. I don't know if people caught that or not, but I told them about a Hooterite woman in Montana, and a Hooterite is kind of like Amish.
Okay, thank you.
Gotcha.
That's
I was lost.
yeah, right.
I thought it was the lady that worked at Hooters.
I was thinking it was a Native American tribe, to be honest with you. Okay, my bad. Go ahead, homie.
Yeah, so I told them about her. She had gotten a nice write up in our alumni magazine about starting her college work at 16, and she was doing it all virtually. Now in 2018, this was a big thing because COVID hadn't happened yet, and with her living on a farm, she's not able to go to campus. So they set everything up online, and she was able to graduate in 3 years. She graduated at 19 and had her bachelor's in agriculture, and just went on. And her collegiate courses counted for her high school diploma as well. So that's where we came up with Larry Sharp's plan, where we basically take the last 2 years of funding and we say you can go to a trade school. You graduate, you can leave high school at after sophomore year. And if you want to go to college, okay, you're going to stay in high school for the next 2 years. Everything proceeds as it is now. If you've decided that college isn't for you, we're going to take that money and you can go to any community college that you want and go learn a trade. If you want to go and have an apprenticeship in the trade, okay, well that can be used to help pay for the apprenticeship, which we were trying to angle shoot some union support because the unions do provide apprenticeships, but they usually pay the student for their time. That's not so we were trying to convince them to get on board. And then we also had it in the policy where if you don't think that either time is good for you and you want to try your hand at being an entrepreneur, that's okay. You can drop out, and then you had up until the age of 20, I think it was 24 or 26, I can't remember, to come back, and you can either get your GED or you can go to community college for 2 years and go get a trade. So it was completely unrestricted, and you were having 16-year-olds that could, hopefully with the guidance of their parents or, some high school counselors, figure out what they want to do. We're trying to take the pressure off of everyone go to college. Everyone go get some kind of piece of paper that says something, and you'll instantly be successful, and you'll sit in the corner office and you'll bark orders at people and you'll have your secretary bring you coffee.
Well, no, was there an option for 16-year-olds after sophomore year to just get their GED and go to work, or because of the New York Constitution, those last 2 years had to be provided? Even if a 16-year-old said, "I'll just go get my GED and go start working," you know what I mean? Like maybe their uncle owns a construction company and they just want to get to work. You know what I mean? Right. Something like that.
Yeah. The GED option was available. But New York State, because of the New York State Constitution, that funding basically has to stay there. And so they were, if I remember correctly, we did hear one story where one student was getting hassled because that's what he wanted to do. Yeah. And the State Board of Regents. So there's apparently there's two levels of high school diplomas in New York. So you have like a regular high school diploma, and then you have a regent's degree, which basically is issued by the State Board of Education. So you take this regent's test at senior year, and then you get this extra degree or special degree. Nobody outside of New York knows about it, and
well, why do you need that?
Don't care. They don't care.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if any prestigious colleges would necessarily weigh you a little bit higher based on a regents. I mean, what does the regents degree entail? Do you know offhand?
You have to take it. You take a test at the end of senior year,
Uh-huh.
and if you pass this test, then you get this regents certificate. It's
Do you have to pay the government to take that test?
no, no. As far as
Oh,
I know, it was offered for free. So
Well, for free, taxes paid
right,
for it,
yeah.
so.
I was gonna say your parents' tax dollars are paying for it, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, there was no additional fee. One of the things that we also wanted to do, and I forgot to mention this, Stacy Pressman will be mad if I don't mention her mayoral run in 21. I was on the policy team for that one as well. And one of the things
Where was that at?
that was New York City. So
Gotcha.
she was running against Eric Adams for mayor. And one of the things that we wanted to do was increase awareness for the New York City schools selective high schools. So the way that you get put on track for, you know, Stuyvesant and some of these other special, you know, very high end, really good instruction New York City public schools is you take a test when you are 4 or 5. And most parents don't know that they have to test their child at 4 or 5 years old to get in a track where they can be considered for all these fancy high schools. And and the test is only offered in English. And so you've got all these parents that are pulling their hairs out. They're just like, well, how do I get my kid to go to this super magnet school? Because I think they're,
Yeah.
you know, I think they're smart and I think they could get in. If they aren't on that track by, you know, kindergarten, first grade, they're hosed.
that's preschool, yeah.
Yeah.
Full
Yeah.
disclosure,
And then
I
the
work.
magnet school isn't even happening until high school, middle school, maybe high school, right? So they take the test
No,
super
that's
early.
it. Could be elementary
Yeah.
school. Full disclosure,
Okay.
I work for a school district, and I've also coached youth sports for well over. There's no way on God's green earth could you tell somebody how smart their kid is at 4 or 5 years old, because my daughter struggled mightily. She started kindergarten at 4 years old, and the first semester she didn't know her alphabet, numbers, sight words, none of that stuff. She turned 5, and by the end of that year, she did know it. And on the sports side, there was kids 4 and 5 years old that were super studs compared to everybody else. And then you'd line them up at 15 years old, and these kids are like 3, 4 inches taller than they were at 5 years old, and they can't hang. So there's no way on God's green earth can you judge a human being and their propensity for success between 4 and 5 years old, because it's simply, you just don't know. Everybody develops differently. So that disturbs me to no end that New York would do that to the parents and the kids.
Yeah.
It's almost like they're a bunch of in there. Right?
Hey, I want to make one more point because I wrote down his name.
Sure.
His name. Eric Adams sucks. He is a terrible, terrible mayor for the city of New York because he tries to play both sides of the fence and doesn't stand on shit. He stands on diarrhea. And you know, there's nothing solid about him or what he stands on whatsoever. And that's solely the opinion of the only real libertarian, Marcus Matthews. But you know, I want to co-sponsor the Black Powder podcast in this. I'll contribute a few bucks to the Black Powder podcast saying Eric Adams sucks. So, you know, I just
We
want to put
need
that
that
out.
website up and running.
EricAdamsSucks.com.
So real quick, and I not to put you on the spot, but for a lightning round, so we can make up some time.
Oh, sure.
Can you name drop the candidates you've helped? I mean, like that you can remember off the top of your head, and if you forget someone, oh well.
Okay. So there's Larry Sharp. There's Stacy Pressman. I helped on Larry's. Judge Gray. I helped on the presidential run in 20. Let's see. Sid Daoud, who's the Senate candidate in Montana. Let's see who else. There was a couple of different ones out west. I'm drawing a couple.
That's fine. I figured on the spot you might forget a few.
Wait,
Most of those sound like they're outside of Illinois, right?
Right. So I was one of the reasons that I was helping a lot of candidates outside of Illinois is because the So I was the campaign manager for Jesse White. So anyone who's in Illinois will have a good chuckle about this. Jesse White is two people. So we have Jesse White, who is Secretary of State for, I think, over 26 years, 24 or 28 years. And he was a Chicago politician, probably the only honest Chicago politician to come out of Chicago in the 20th century.
Gotcha. Wow.
He was a decorated war veteran, had numerous charities, spoke 7 or 8 different languages. Basically, if we offered a ballot in Illinois, he spoke that language. Wow. And he took it on his own time to learn that language because he was he does certify elections, basically statewide election results. And so he wanted, if there was ever any question as to what the ballot said, he wanted to be able to tell. Wow. So great guy. Everybody in Illinois likes Jesse White. Jesse White, my candidate, was a gentleman by the name of Jesse White out of Centralia, Illinois. And he would get phone calls constantly from people in 4 different counties, because Centralia is actually on the county line of 4 different counties. And they would call him asking for DMV questions. Mm-hmm. Because the Secretary of State in Illinois manages the DMV.
Wow.
So Jesse White, the candidate, knows a lot about the DMV, and that tends to be what the Secretary of State office campaign. That's what all the issues are. They're almost all DMV and believe it or not, terrorism questions, because the Secretary of State's office handles cybersecurity and terrorism outside of in the entire state outside of Chicago. So, he's pretty well. He got pretty well versed. We were not able to keep him on the ballot. The Democrats challenged our statewide petitions and only challenged him because Jesse White was
just because of the name recognition.
Just because of name recognition, and so the jig was up for us, and they said, well, we'll withdraw the objections if you find an alternate candidate. And the legal battle on this was going to cost us probably going to cost us about $100,000 to $200,000.
Sheesh.
That's why they get away with it. I wanted to ask you something, man. Full disclosure, he's been on this podcast probably 2 to 3 times, but in Montana, Lyman Bishop, we actually text each other quite often, and I've never met him in person, but we always have interesting conversations. You didn't work with him in Montana?
I did not. So
okay.
Well, next time.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's running again, but he's a very interesting guy. He's very opinionated, and I like what when he owned his business, he wouldn't sell anything to the government, and I appreciated that about him. He would only sell to American citizens. He owned Hoplite Armor, for those who know about that. But he recently sold it, so he's no longer the owner of it. That's why it's changed a little bit.
Okay. Well,
So,
oh,
go ahead,
go ahead,
Russ.
Eric.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, selling items to the government is an interesting process, particularly if you're going through the bid process. And then they will nickel and dime you or nickel and dime you for
I
discount.
prefer knuckle and dimes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, knuckle and
They,
dime.
because they give you the knuckles if you go sideways on them,
Right.
and you can knuckle them back. So we'll go with knuckle and dime. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but go ahead.
Those shirts will be in the black powder shop tomorrow.
Knuckle and dime.
Knuckle and dime. All right. Sometimes I come up
I'm not splitting it 3 ways though, so
that's all right.
You got-
That's my gift to you. I was late, so that's
okay. Yeah,
I
I'll
don't
send you
go.
guys a t-shirt.
dime off of knuckle and dime. How about that?
There you go.
My bad, Mr. Clark. Go ahead.
So, with government purchase orders and the way that the government does business, there is an advantage to not wanting to participate in some of their programs. One of the, I don't know if you've had people come on the podcast and talk about Section 8 and some of the problems with Section 8. And we touched on this a little bit in the Larry campaign, but Section 8 housing, there's a vast shortage of it. And the reason that is because it's a voluntary program. Landlords do not have to accept Section 8 vouchers. And a lot of landlords won't, not because they hate poor people or they think that there's something wrong with lower
need.
with lower income people. It's because they don't want to wait 3 to 6 months to get paid on January rent. If they don't have the cash flow available to handle not getting paid January until let's say July, then yeah, it's not a program that's going to work for them. And then once you're in Section 8, it's almost impossible to get out because they will hamstring your rental business to keep that rental there and available for Section 8. So those fixes can only come from the federal government because it's so mismanaged at HUD. But
abolish HUD.
Well, now from what you said, I have a policy question for you.
Okay.
And I would like, this is the policy that you would give the presumptive libertarian presidential candidate. Why does government ruin everything?
Because the president, when he's elected when he takes the oath of office on the first day, the president finds out he has 100 bosses.
Right.
In the U.S. Senate. And they will all let him know that they are his boss. If he wants a judge appointment, if he wants a program to go through, if he wants his cabinet to get through ratification really quickly, those gentlemen are going to be telling the president who they like and who they don't. Now, sometimes this works to our advantage. So I'm trying to remember the name of Biden's nominee for the comptroller. She was an avowed Marxist. Went to university in Kazakhstan and was developing a plan for a centralized bank or a central bank cryptocurrency. So, and I will give credit to the Democratic senators on the finance committee. They had a lot of questions for her, and the Republicans were an immediate no. So when she got the Senate hearing was terrible.
I vaguely remember what you're talking about.
Was it Saleh Omarova?
Yes.
All right. I just Googled that.
Omarova appointment. Yeah. Now, here's why the comptroller of currency matters. The comptroller of the currency actually controls the printing plates for greenbacks, as well as manages all the credit unions in the United States. So the Fed doesn't handle any credit union. They all report to the Office of Thrift, and that reports to the comptroller. So she's got roughly 40% of the banking sector, and she gets to write the rules if the Fed were to implement a cryptocurrency. She's the one that tells the Fed how to do it. The Fed doesn't get to decide because she's part of the Treasury Department. So this person would have been bad all the way around. And I will give the Democratic senators a lot of credit for eventually figuring it out that the Republicans were not just mad because this is a Democrat or this is somebody from outside the country. This is a person with an agenda, and she somehow, some way got her master's thesis in Kazakhstan buried. They can't find a copy of it anywhere, where she actually talked about how a Marxist cryptocurrency would actually work. So
I think that's an oxymoron right there.
Yeah, like when you said cryptocurrency, I was like, yo, that doesn't sound bad. But
a Marxist cryptocurrency doesn't seem like it could ever possibly exist, and I will refute you. And
so,
and you saying that's a ridiculous statement. I still love you, brother.
All right, so right.
I don't think
you don't like Marxist cryptocurrency. That's okay.
I can't see how you can combine those words. That's what are you gonna use? Grain, you know,
rocks that they have to mine themselves. So
I mean, yeah.
I got a 2-part question here, and it doesn't got to. We only got a little bit of time, but what goes into being a policy advisor, and what does that entail? So, I mean, like, how did you volunteer? Were you chosen? Do you choose the candidates you want to work for? Do you prefer state or national level? I know you worked in a mayoral campaign as well, so could you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, so I'll riff a little bit, and I'll try to answer all the questions. So Larry had an open call for volunteers, and basically was interviewing candidates, and I happened to offer something that a lot of people in our party don't know about, which is energy. I'm an engineer. I've got over 22 years in the energy business. I've been a project manager for the past 13 years. So how you can get into that is basically by working on policy that's in your field already. So that was kind of my in, and that's been my in for a lot of libertarian candidates. If they have questions on energy, they're more than welcome to email me, and I'll try and help them out. I've got experience in oil, natural gas, electricity,
nuclear.
No, that's the one hole. I don't have nuclear. My quantum mechanics.
No, I'm just kidding.
My quantum mechanics class was not good.
You got a C in quantum mechanics. Got it.
Okay. So
Yeah.
initially when you said energy, I was thinking like when you show up to the convention, you're the guy that's like getting
Yeah,
everybody.
I got
hyped
that
up.
energy. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
see that
I was
with my
like,
dog.
hey, you know what I'm saying? You're like the DJ at the rave that just gets every, the electronic lights and explosives, and when you get things started in the Libertarian Party. But that is one of the things, because I always say I believe in nuclear power. I'm the all the above guy when it comes to energy policy. How do you think? And we're like Eric was saying, we usually wrap up about an hour, so we got a little bit more. But energy
We
is
can
a
go
very
over.
critical issue that we need to speak to before we wrap this up. What would be the libertarian policy on energy from Mr. Clark for the president?
So,
Yeah.
my recommendation, and I think all of our candidates are pro-nuclear.
Mhm.
That would be the one thing that I would tell them is that be pro-nuclear and be pro-fusion. So, remember the Department of Energy has had a repeatable, successful fusion experiment
Yes.
that produced more energy than it took to
And the
create the fusion. Okay, so when that happened in the Manhattan Project, and when they developed the first nuclear reactor, it took them about 15 years to go from the experimental one underneath the football field at the University of Chicago to the first commercial power plant, and I think it was the Yankee power plant in New England. So we need to be focusing on how do we get fusion going. And I'll say this, I don't have any experience in nuclear, but I know that you have to generate the hydrogen atoms and the hydrogen isotopes to create fusion. So in my mind, from the engineer's point of view, these fusion reactors are probably going to have to be paired with a small nuclear reactor, a small fission reactor. The fission reactor will provide the hydrogen and the isotopes necessary to feed the fusion reactor down. That'll be next door. Now, that means that if you are anti-nuclear, like we're creating, you're basically the anti-nuclear people will say, well, you're taking a fission bomb and putting it next to the H bomb, because that's what the H bomb is. It's a fusion reaction, not a fission reaction. But if you want green energy, if you want cheap, affordable, reliable, dispatchable electricity that doesn't come from hydrocarbons, that's your option. And it's the next step to absolution. And I don't know if you've ever heard that term, but absolution is basically where you take matter and combine it with antimatter, and that's the fuel that powers the Enterprise. In Star Trek, is absolution. So we're never going to get to absolution unless we figure out fusion. So that's where I would take them, and we need to be on that path. We now have the viable pathway. Well, now how do you get it into a steady state process to where that reaction is ongoing all the time, and you take the heat from that reaction and you use it to turn on a turbine and generate an electric current off of it. So,
with that being said,
I have one more.
Go ahead.
Star Wars or Star Trek?
Oh, I'm a Trekkie.
You got 2 strikes today, but go
what? Honestly, I'm neither. Oh, I'm just kidding.
No, that's because you're a nerd. Only real alpha man can have the debate between Star Trek and Star Wars. If you're not in that debate, you sit down to pee. And I'm not saying Eric sits down to pee, but all I'm saying is if you cannot have that basic nerd level of a debate
Well,
in the Libertarian
so
Party, are you really a libertarian?
I became neither once they both became propaganda. Is
Oh,
my thing. So
yeah.
now, like the new current stuff.
Right.
You're not a purist.
Yeah.
So,
Only
but before 2000,
Mhm.
or even like I guess episode 1 was terrible, but it was anyways. I was a Star Wars guy, but once they both became propaganda, I'm like, I don't like either because they're both like, I don't know. Anyways,
Okay.
I digress.
Yeah.
So Russ, I'm not trying to put you on the spot here,
Yeah.
but have you ever thought about running for office yourself?
Yes. So right now I'm considering running for county board
Awesome.
here in town. So um, the the nice thing about that race is that it's small. The district that I live in would only be 5,000 people, and I think for a lot of people who are uh, just starting out and don't have a lot of political experience, maybe they've never worked on a campaign before, um, go work for a local candidate. Go work on a lot of mayor's races are nonpartisan. Go work on city council or a mayor's race. See if you like it. Those policies are going to have a huge impact on your life, more so than
Yeah.
who your senator is or who your congressman is. And you get into all sorts of things. You'll get into economic development. You'll get into schools. You'll get into uh, how can we cycle the street lights so that we don't have stop and go traffic all the time? Stuff like that.
Local kitchen table issues that affect Americans more so than what Bernie Sanders or Mitch McConnell are doing in Washington D.C. because all politics are local, and I think that's the message that libertarians need to send. Um, with people like Michael White, who's running local, vote and support libertarian candidates so we can get this message across that we can govern, because this I can't emphasize this enough every podcast. This is the libertarian time. Over the next 5 to 6 months, this is where we need to gain traction and put ourselves out there as a viable option, because nobody likes where we're going. And right now America is effectively a 33 state, not state but nation.
Yeah.
Because and that there's one group that's growing, and that's the independents. The other two are shrinking. And if we can have people like Russ Clark come on here and speak to policy issues that make sense, this is one of the major reasons I call this the only real libertarian podcast, because a lot of people pander to the culture wars and whatever is hot, but they're not solidifying the foundation. And as the Bible says, you could build your house on a rock or on sand, and we all know whose house is going to stand when the storm comes, and that's what government is. The government is a storm.
Yeah.
So the Libertarian Party needs to be that house that's built on the rock with a strong foundation for America, for Americans. And with that, Eric, do you have anything to say before we pass it off to Russ for his final comments?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, Russ, thanks for coming on the show. I know we had some miscommunication errors, some scheduling conflicts at the beginning, but dude, this was a great episode.
Absolutely.
I think you're gonna make a great local candidate. I'm excited for you when you announce your run officially. We'd like to have you back on. Is that cool with you, Marcus?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then you could lay out your campaign. You could, I don't know, tell us about the district, the community, the issues, and then we'll obviously try to help get you some funding, some fundraising in your direction.
100% we will.
You know what I mean? Like that sounds like a smaller district race, but I think I don't. Is it partisan or nonpartisan?
So it is partisan. So
Okay, so that's
so yeah, I would
you're
run
gonna need our help.
Libertarian. So I'm not gonna carry a false flag. So
Gotcha. So you would run as a libertarian, and that's where we usually only have libertarians on. Marcus had Eric Brakey on once, but that's kind of a big deal. So
He's a Republican libertarian if that exists. So
okay, well, I mean,
anyways,
Amash is right that right now. So I mean,
yeah, I mean, like, and I'm an
I'm
Amash
more of a
fan too.
purist myself. I believe in absolute
Dude,
liberty.
Marcus, you were like an independent 3 months ago.
That was probably more so 6 months ago. I was a registered independent, and then I went to a Chase thing, and I had to change my affiliate because I got berated for.
That's
I
right.
thought it was cool. I was like, yeah, F the system. I'm not in the system. I thought that was libertarian enough, but when I hung out with libertarians, apparently it wasn't so. I got berated.
You're the only real libertarian for the last
I am
6
now
months.
because I registered when I registered as a libertarian. I did it nationally and statewide, so that's
right.
why I'm the only real. Because I would say 99.9% of you only are registered with the state. You're not registered nationally.
Look, I
the only
am
real.
gonna be a national delegate, fool. But
Yeah.
anyways, I digress. No,
Okay,
Russ,
yeah. So tell the people
I had
how
a
they
blast.
can. Eric had a blast. I hope you caught that.
okay, good.
Yeah, but
I'm glad we had a good show tonight, guys. This has been great. So.
Yeah, so tell the people how to see you and if they wanted to contact you per se about policy advice and all that stuff because you have a extensive experience in doing this. Michael White, once you recap this episode, Russ Clark could possibly help you too. Um, Go to mw4liberty.com to donate or sign up to volunteer for Michael White. But Russ, can you tell us how to get in touch with you if need be?
Yeah. So probably the best way for people to get a hold of me would be on Twitter right now. And my Twitter handle is Russ_Clark1. So I had Russ_Clark and something happened and I wound up losing it. So, but that's my Twitter handle. That's probably the easiest. Until I get my if I do run, then I'll have my campaign page up, and I can tell you that what the campaign page will be, and that will be russclark.org because I already own the domain.
All right, I was about to say I hope you own that before you put it
No,
out.
No.
There.
And that's actually one of the things. So I'm gonna kind of close this out with a couple of recommendations that I always make to candidates, or if you're considering running for office. The first one is to do what I did and go get your domain name registered and have it be, yourname.org or yourname.com, yourname.us. All three of those domains would work. And it's best that you get those way ahead of time so that you're not scrambling. If the political contest comes up that you want to run in and you think you can win, the first thing that's going to be your campaign's front door. If you already have the front door purchased, and you purchased it 5 years ago, it doesn't. You're not struggling to come up with a campaign name or with a domain name. Second of all, I will recommend 2 books if you're interested in learning about campaigning. The first one is called The Campaign Manager. It's available on Amazon. And I think it's Catherine Shaw. I know the last name is Shaw. That's the book that I reference. She does a great job of explaining how to campaign for small local offices. I would say you can probably use that for any political office up to a state senate or a state house campaign. She goes through how to fundraise. She goes through how to develop a campaign budget. She, tells you how to cut turf. She tells you how to evaluate. And she's the only campaign book that I've come across that tells you how to do district analysis, which is critical for you to win. That's how you can tell what district you are likely to, what precinct you're likely to win, or what precinct you're likely to lose. The other one is going to be helpful in policy, and it's you guys will love it. It's called The Dictator's Handbook. So I actually read that one, and it was very interesting. So that is how to gain and use power to support yourself and your re-elections. So how does Bernie keep on winning elections? Well, yeah, he's got a great personality online. I don't know him personally, but he knows how to reward the voters of Vermont for sending him back to the Senate every 6 years. And that's one of the ways that this book will give you some ideas, bad examples, but some ideas of how to develop policy that are going to provide solutions to people and say, oh yeah, that guy, he did this, and I like that. I think a lot of times we have libertarian candidates that say, well, I want to wreck the system. If you're like me and you're middle-aged, you don't want to wreck the system, because 20 years down the road, I'm going to be retired. And then I've got to live off of what I'm making. If you wreck it now, where am I going to be? What's your solution for me? If and I have parents that are retired. What does that look like for them? It's important for you to have a goal that's going to be good for everybody. And one of the things that I've been trying to come up with a message is, how do we get the libertarian message to be, we're the party that trusts you enough to know that you can do the right thing for you. And that comes out really wonky. Like I said, I'm working on it. Because the reason that a lot of younger people are going to the progressives is because the progressives are using morality and saying, I know what's good for you. We're going to have the government force you to do all this stuff, because that's what we do as a group. We tell government what to do, and then government comes and forces us to do it. That's not the way that it's been done in this country for over 240 years. We've had other institutions where people voluntarily come together and provide meals for the homeless, or help little kids that have lost their parents. We've been doing this without government for a very long time, and it was only until I'll point the finger at LBJ. It was really up until the 60s that government really just stepped in and sidestepped the churches, who provided a lot of these community services, and said, no, Big Papa government will do it. Yeah. So those are my recommendations for people. If they think they want to be a candidate someday, go get your domain name and read a couple books. And
gotcha.
I
wrote those books down, by the way.
Okay.
Excellent. All right, Mr. Clark, I want to thank you very much for coming on the Black Powder Podcast, talking policy, talking liberty, talking gold. With that being said, and as we always end our podcast, I want to tell my fellow Americans, in the grand refrain of the founding of this country, live free
or die.
Peace. Thank you.
All right.